Hello and welcome. If you follow my channel, you know I'm a fan of the HP Microserver series, in particular the Gen 7 series, which I've shown on this channel quite a few times. The Gen 7, it's a very inexpensive microserver, it's got plenty of space for hard drives inside, and for like £50, it's unbeatable. You can install TrueNas on it, you can install SAS drives in it, you can have 16 gigabytes of RAM. It's pretty good for the price. Obviously, it's not a high power system, so you can't do virtual machine on it, you can't do transcoding. But for the money, it's absolutely amazing. So by the time I purchased 3 Gen 7 microservers, and I was planning to replace my aging NAS and another one, I was planning to store all my YouTube videos and all my private stuff, all my photos, all my pictures and everything. But then I went ahead and placed an order for 2 HP Microserver Gen 8. Why is that? Well, I'll tell you in a minute, but today I received 2 of these machines, and what we're going to do today, we're going to test one. I need to make sure it works, and mostly because they arrived with no packaging, and it really escapes me in 2026, how can an online business think that this can be shipped without packing material? I don't understand. So there doesn't seem to be any damage on the box, but what we're going to do today, we're going to test it as it is, we're going to explore inside, and then we're going to almost max it out, which means we're going to fit 16 gigabytes of ECC RAM, we are going to fit a SAS controller card to upgrade the existing controller, and then we're going to fit a better CPU, which is not going to be the best that this box can fit, but I'll explain you why in a minute. And finally, I'm going to install some pretty large hard drives in it, and the plan is to run TrueNas and just retire my old Netgear, which is limited on quite a few aspects, and then use this one as my main server. So first thing first, I'd like to power it up as it is, make sure that everything is fine, make sure the BIOS is the latest version. There is an ILO, which is a remote control. I want to make sure it's the latest version as well. Make sure that everything works, there's no damage, and then we'll take a look inside, we'll tinker with it, because this is my first one, so I don't really know what I'm going to find inside. We're going to swap all the thermal paste, we're going to have service everything, open the power supply, blow the dust out of it. We're going to tinker with it at the next level, and eventually throughout the video I'd like to answer the question, is it better to get a Gen 7 or a Gen 8? Don't get me wrong, the Gen 7 still has a trick up its sleeve. It's not just this is better because it's newer. I'll explain you why later. Now let's have a quick visual inspection, then we'll plug it in and make sure everything works. So this should be the very base model. The seller also had others with better CPUs and more RAM, but I have my own RAM. I purchased it for my Gen 7 for my other videos, and when it comes to the CPU, I just wanted to choose my own. So it was cheaper to get the basic model. This should be a seller-owned CPU, 4 gigabytes of RAM, which nowadays is very little, and nothing else, no hard drives, but it should come with all the caddies and hopefully all the screws. Otherwise, I have my screws, it's no big deal. The good news is that despite the non-existing packaging, I don't see damage. I don't see anything bent. The only thing I can see on this one is there's something in here, but is it like blue tack? I don't know how much you can see that. Whatever that is, it looks like liquid, but I don't think it's liquid. Do I see something here? I have to say that it looks like liquid, but we'll have a look. Probably is nothing. And then I think I feel something rattling inside, which once again, it might be normal, might be... Yeah, there is definitely something inside. We don't want to power it up as it is, but besides a little bit of scratches, obviously it's a used unit, so you're expecting that. I don't see anything major, and everything's... Oh, there's one of the feet is missing, not the end of the world. But everything else seems to be totally fine. Yes, everything seems to be totally fine. I think I really like how modular this is. I haven't really looked around on how to open these things, but it looks like the whole motherboard slides out from the back. I can see that the fan has some anti-vibration, which I think the Gen 7 is lacking. And we'll see. Let's have a look. Let's open the front and see what's inside. Most importantly, let's find what this rattling noise is and where it's coming from. Obviously, I'll have to remove it. So the front panel is intact. We have all the base, though 2 are not seated. Is there a reason for that, or they just didn't care? Maybe there were hard drives inside and they just removed the drives and put it back in. Yeah, it looks fine. Oh, these are... I guess these are empty. Okay, I believe that this metal brackets here are just to keep the bay in place. Okay, yes. So clearly this NAS was running 2 drives. I'm sorry, this is in the way, but it was running 2 drives because I have 2 bays with the whatever these are called, just to keep it in place, and 2 without, which is totally fine. It's a bit flimsy, I have to say. I think I really like the Gen 7 design a bit better. But besides that, let's take them out. Yeah. Why is this coming out without me pulling the latch here? I'd imagine that when the hard drive is in, this is not going to happen. That's probably how they're designed. And probably this one, because it has those metal parts in it. Oh no, well, this is coming out anyways. Okay, let's have a look inside. Everything seems to be fine. I don't see any damage. I don't see corrosion. I don't even see much dust. I'd imagine probably the seller has removed the dust. Oh, the front panel is coming off very easily. It's pretty solid and sturdy, I have to say. That is good. So no damage in there. We'll have to open it up to find out where that metal noise is coming from. And I believe the other one, which is still in the box, is a slightly different design. It says Gen 8 here somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. We'll take a look later. But on this video, we're going to do one, because I think that's enough. And then I'll inspect the other one myself. Might make a video with it about it. I don't know. Probably not. But yeah, let's remove the frame, which I believe is these screws here. I guess it's coming off this direction. Yes. Oh, so this comes with no optical drive, which is honestly not a big deal. One of the downsides of the Gen 8 is that there is no space for extra drives. Well, I guess you can fit 2.5 inches here. You can fit 2.5 inches a bit everywhere. But when it comes to 3.5 inches, it's really limited to the 4 drives that you can find inside. So what is it that is rattling inside? Oh, okay. It's just that. It's just the bracket that came dislodged. So yeah, obviously we want to remove it. Yeah, there we go. That's it. There's nothing else. We'll take a look later on. There is a space for a micro SD card in here. It's absolutely amazing. There's a space for a USB stick as Gen 7. And then I see a big ILO chip there. And I really like the idea that this has ILO. ILO, we'll explore it later, but it's basically a way to access the server even if the server is powered off. So you can access the unit and turn it on or restart it like a hardware restart. So if your operating system freezes, you can still access the ILO, which is always active as long as the power is plugged in. And you can do lots of operations through that one. I think you can access the BIOS as well. So if you do something wrong remotely and your system crashes, freezes, doesn't, restarts, and it doesn't load the operating system from the appropriate drive because something went wrong with what you're doing, you can still fix it or try to fix it through the ILO. It's a nice option for a NAS, whether you're a private person just using it as a NAS or you need it for more professional stuff. But the good news is everything seems to be okay. And there is some RAM here. By the way, this is from HP, so I guess this came with the box. And I believe this box, Gen 8, require ECC RAM, while Gen 7, you could accept ECC RAM, but it wasn't required. Okay, well, everything seems to be good. I don't see much dust. I would say let's power it up and make sure that it works. And then we'll think about doing something else. Yeah, obviously I need a new foot, otherwise this is going to wobble a bit. But yeah, so far so good. I'm relieved because when I saw this big box coming today without packing material, I took some picture because I thought, I don't know what I'm going to find inside. But so far so good, touch wood. Let me wire my capture device and we're going to turn it on. I'm about to give power to the unit. I can see this comes with a Delta 200 watts power supply, which is more powerful than the 150 watts I found in the Gen 7. And that was a problem if you want more than 4 drives. At that point, the power supply doesn't have enough juice for all the drives. I guess it depends on the drives as well. So this should be a bit more capable. Out of the box, you don't have to do any upgrades. Right, power to the box, 3, 2, 1, go. I don't see anything, but I think that's expected. And there is I see a flashing green light at the front. I guess flashing means good, but the fan is not running. I haven't got an output. So let's push the button and see what happens. 3, 2, 1, go. And nothing happens. That's interesting. Still flashing green. It takes its time. That's interesting. Well, we have something. Early process initialization. Okay, now it's switched off. And now it's back. I guess this is normal. I'll fix the capture device. Well, it is working, it's good. It's taking its time to boot up, as you'd expect from a server type of machine. We have a Celeron G1610T, which is what I was expecting, and 4 GB of RAM, totally fine. We have an HP Smart Array B120i RAID controller, which I'm not going to use, at least I'm not going to use, because I would like to plug SAS drives, and this is only a SATA controller, if I'm not mistaken. We have no drives detected, totally fine, and there must be like tons and tons of options on this unit. We have ILO 4 has detected a self-test error, so I might need to have a look at that, probably because the Ethernet is not plugged in. I'm hoping so. And we are now in the loop boot where it's trying to boot from something and obviously nothing happens. Great! Now, let me familiarize with all the settings and everything myself, because otherwise it's going to take hours just to explore this in real time. So I'll explore the BIOS a bit, I'll explore the box a bit, and then I'll come back to you. If you like my videos, I'd like to ask you a favor. I would like to upgrade the front-facing camera I'm using for my videos. I'm currently using my iPad and the front camera of the iPad, which is not great. So I'd like to upgrade the image quality from this to this. And to do that, I'd like to purchase a Sony E10, which is the same camera I'm using for the overhead. If you would like to help me with that, I set up a GoFundMe page. The link is down below in the description, so take a look at what I'd like to do, and if you don't want to donate, it's totally fine. I hope you're enjoying the video, and in fact, I've been talking too much, so let's go back to the video. Alright, I've been familiarizing with this box a little bit without upgrading anything. I'd like to do everything on camera, but I'm really glad I did it, because this is a much more complex machine than the Gen 7. The Gen 7 feels like a mini computer. It's standard BIOS, not many features. This is actually a microserver. It's got server features in it, which I wasn't familiar with, and it would have taken absolutely forever to do this on camera, so I explored the BIOS and all the options, and I do have a plan. I think there's quite a lot of things to do. I'm really looking forward to seeing the end of this. So first thing first, I'm going to show you the boot process, and I'll show you all the server features of this box, which I feel are just amazing for the price of these machines. I'm going to show you the ILO, where's that, integrated light out, something like that, to control and run the server remotely, even when the server is switched off. I'm going to show you the intelligent provision feature, and I'm going to show you the integrated controller RAID features. Then we're going to run a benchmark, and we're going to take a benchmark baseline, because this is the base machine, Celeron and 4 GB. After that, I think we need to update quite a lot of firmware. I think the BIOS needs to be updated, the ILO firmware needs to be updated, the intelligent provision, I'm not sure, the HP controller needs to be updated. I think everything really needs to be updated. There is firmware updates, which I think the latest one is 2019, so not too long ago, though I think most of those later BIOSes are for mitigating Intel vulnerabilities, which I'm kind of thinking whether I should do that or not, because to mitigate the vulnerabilities, they slow down things. Obviously, they add internal processes to mitigate things. They can't change the hardware. But anyways, we got lots of things to update. Then we are going to take out the motherboards, and we are going to update the CPU and the RAM. I do have the RAM from the Gen 7, which I purchased from the Gen 7. It's 16 GB of ECC6, and meanwhile, I've got the updated CPU that I'd like to use on this server, so we're going to run an update. Once everything is updated from a hardware and software perspective, we'll run another benchmark and we'll see what kind of improvement we've got, and most importantly, we'll compare it to a box standard N40L and maybe an N54L as well. Then we're going to install my LSI SAS card, which is going to replace the integrated controller, and I have a number of SAS drives, and this is a Western Digital 14 terabyte hard drives. I'm going to try and fit 4 of these in this machine, because I'd like this machine to become my main NAS, and I'm going to go against the general recommendation of 1 GB of RAM per 1 TB of storage on TrueNas. We'll talk about that later, and you'll have all your chances to leave a comment down below and say you're crazy or yeah, that's going to be fine. No worries about that. I really don't know. So we're going to experiment this together. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to power up this unit, and I'm going to show you all the features or some of the features. I'm going to show you the booting process, the posting process. It's quite complex. I don't think I have completely understood it myself. Anyways, when I'm plugging the server up, I think there's something that needs to happen within the server before the server is ready to run. And if I turn it on now, nothing really happens. It takes about like 10 seconds, something like that. Next time you try it, it's going to be instant. But the first power on will take a little bit of time. I guess there's something that needs to power up behind the scenes. I'd imagine maybe it's the ILO. But in a second, the fan should start. There we go. The fan has started now. And the first thing you're seeing on screen, it's this early processor initialization. I don't know exactly what it does. Sometimes it restarts during this process. The fan might speed up or not. But I guess it's where the system is making sure that everything is in order. There you go. It's switched off. And now it's coming back up and it's continuing this early processor initialization. I'm not really sure why that happens, but it doesn't happen all the time. Bear in mind, this is a server, so every proper server will take forever to post and boot. And I think the reason is they want to make sure that everything is working 100%, not like a PC. You want to get to Windows as soon as possible. When all those test and initializations are complete, and by the way, we have an ILO IP already set up, 192.168.0.222 that we can check in a minute. We get into this graphical environment, which I guess is the second part of the booting process, where it continues. It's more, I would say that's more of a standard booting process. It's initializing the processor again, and it's going to show the processor type and the RAM in a second. Once again, we have the ILO at the bottom left of the screen. That's configurable, by the way. You don't have to display it. We have our CPU, we have our RAM. It says redundant ROM detected. This thing has two ROMs. Obviously, one fails, so you can go to the other one. Then we have ILO with a test, self-test error. We might need to take a look. And this is ILO version 2.5, and that will need to be upgraded for a specific reason, and then the server will try to boot from a drive. I have no drives in here, so nothing is going to happen, and now it's trying to boot from the network, and this is not going to happen, and we'll restart this little process over and over again until you have either USB stick or the network. You can't really plug a drive. So let me go back to the beginning. Let's have a look at the ILO. Now we are back to the graphical environment, and to configure the ILO, it's F8 in a second. There we go, F8 to configure, and I'm pressing F8, and I'm getting into this very basic setup where I'm basically telling the system how to make the ILO work. Now there are 3 Ethernet ports at the back. 2 are regular Ethernet ports, and they can be teamed together for higher speeds apparently. Probably needs a little bit of support from the operating system, but then there is an ILO Ethernet port, and that can be configured here. You can basically say whether you want to use the dedicated ILO port for ILO, or by pressing spacebar, you can disable the whole thing altogether, or you can have ILO on using the regular port, so you don't need a separate connection for ILO. And I think that's how I'm gonna set mine up. So I'm gonna boot my Ethernet cable, which is wired to my home network, not to the ILO port, but to a regular network port. And so that's gonna be shared network port, LOM, whatever. And I'm gonna hit F10 to save. And it says ILO 4 will be reset upon exiting. Perfect. Obviously, I got DHCP enabled on the ILO, so the ILO is getting an IP address. I'm wondering whether the ILO is getting a separate different IP address on the same network or not. We'll see what happens, but for now, I'll just keep it there and we'll see what happens. And obviously, you have the user, because ILO will give you full control of the, let's say, the hardware of the server, so you can change your password and your user. This comes with an administrator user. I've already changed the password to something I know, so that's definitely something you want to do. Once you've done that, you can basically go back and we'll take a look at the ILO on my browser. So I'm going to hit exit, and I think ILO was reset. This utility will now exit. Perfect. Resetting ILO. I'm not sure whether the box is rebooting now or not. And the system is now continuing its booting process. Now let me restart and make sure I got the ILO IP address, and we'll try and get into the ILO from my browser. There we go, we have a different IP address, 232, so let's try and connect to it. I got a privacy error. I'm not sure whether this might be sorted or resolved with the latest version. But there we go, I got ILO 4 ProLiant, firmware version 2.50, and local username is my administrator, and the password, is that correct? Yes, there we go, we are into the ILO. Now, I understand that this is the ILO Advanced. The box came with an advanced key. I understand with the ILO Basic, you can't really do much, but don't quote me on that. Apparently, if you Google, you can find an advanced key. I mean, this is an old product. Now, what can you do from an ILO? Now, number one, you can turn on and off the server. You can restart the server. So imagine your server is completely dead and it's not responding to your VNC, remote desktop, whatever, because it's got stuck into something, whatever. The operating system is frozen and it's just frozen there. So you need someone to go there and just pull the plug and pull it back in. Well, you can do it from here. Here on the power management, you got the virtual power button, and you can gracefully power off, force power cycle. I can do a reset. So if I tap on reset, it will ask me, are you sure you want to reset this device? And the device will reset. There we go, and the server is restarting. And you can imagine this is amazing. It gives you like total control of the server. The server can be hidden somewhere in your cupboard or wherever, and that's it, you have control of everything. Now, there are tons of features. I don't really want to go through everything here. One thing I haven't tried myself is the remote console. Apparently, you're supposed to see the video output of the server on your computer, even the BIOS video output. So you can get into the BIOS, you can do things that you would normally only do with a keyboard connected to your server. So let's give it a go. I haven't tried this myself. Would you look at that? This is the video output of the server. I mean, this is so impressive. Absolutely impressive. That's it. So you don't need to ever go to your server with a keyboard and a mouse. You can do everything from here. Now, how do I use the keyboard here? Can I just... Oh, keyboard. Oh, there we go. F9, I got into the BIOS. I don't know. I find this amazing. I mean, I was aware of this, but I didn't know you could. I didn't know it came with the Gen 8, because the Gen 7 doesn't have it, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't know the Gen 8 microserver came with this feature. Now, are you gonna use it? No, but I feel enthusiastic about this. This little server that I purchased for £60 comes with this. It means that one day I'm away, I need to access my NAS. My NAS is not responding. It's fine. I can restart it, I can power cycle it, I can get into the BIOS. And my understanding, I don't know exactly where it is. We'll take a look in a minute because I want to do the updates through that. You can update the BIOS through ILO, you can update the ILO itself through ILO, and you can mount an ISO file through ILO. So remotely, well, in this case, I'm on a network, so it's going to be fast enough. But you can actually boot an operating system you have on your local computer 1,000 kilometers away on your microserver. Obviously, if there's internet in between and you are trying to boot something big, maybe it's not going to work. Unless it needs to be on a local device. I don't think so. There is storage for an SD card, by the way, so it could be a good idea to have an ISO just in a small SD card, so you can run Linux from it anytime your main SSD is failing, as if it failed all the time. But anyways, I find this absolutely fantastic. Now you can get into the BIOS, so you can do those changes there, but here in the boot order, for example, you can change the boot order of all your drives. So once again, if your server gets stuck and it doesn't boot up anymore because it's, I don't know, or you want to boot from a USB stick instead of the DVD, you have full control. Once again, this is the advanced version. I understand that the base version, and this unit comes with the base version. If you buy one online, it probably have the base ILO. It doesn't have much. But once again, you can try and Google it, and some forums might be able to give you some advice. Obviously, you have a battery of diagnostic through the ILO, and I can see the redundant ROM support. We have the active ROM, which is running the JO6 of 2015, and then we have the backup ROM, which is running the JO6 of 2015. And there's an issue with one ROM. You run an update through the ILO, and it fails. Well, you can come here and swap the ROM. I guess that's probably where that little pre-sequence before it's actually posting comes useful. I guess that's where the system is able to swap the ROMs. I don't really know, but there are tons of features. Again, I don't really want to go through all of them right now, mostly because I don't really know them. And probably this is going to take like a number of videos just to go through everything. Just bear in mind that this feature comes with the Gen 8. Now, the system is telling me that the ILO firmware version is 2.50, and I would definitely recommend you go at least at 2.60. But there's no reason not to go to the latest version, which we will do at some point. And the reason is, one common failure of this server is that the ILO NAND, it's a little SanDisk chip on the motherboard, unfortunately it's BGA, fails. Because apparently the ILO before 2.60 was writing too many logs on the NAND itself, and the NAND eventually would fail, and the only way to fix it is to replace the NAND. Then you can just reinstall everything, so you don't need a programmer, but you actually have to replace the NAND, which is not a trivial task. So if you get one of these servers and you care about the ILO, again, I guess you are not going to use the ILO every day, but you might need it at some point. Go to version 2.60 or higher. So in a few minutes, we're going to update to the latest version. I just wanted to point it out. Now, to get to the BIOS is F9, and it happens, you can type F9 in a number of places during the boot process. And I find this BIOS pretty comprehensive. For being a server, usually servers, I would think, very limited. There's not much you can do. There's one major thing that you can do, but it's really full of stuff, including overclocking and power settings and cooling settings, things I really didn't expect. I got power profile in here. I got the balanced power and performance, the minimum power usage, the maximum performance, and even custom. What does custom do? Well, it doesn't do anything. It only says custom. But anyways, you got these options, and I'm surprised to find them here. Lots and lots of options. You can disable things you don't need. I think at some point I'm going to disable this HP Dynamic Smart Array B120i because I'm not going to use it. So at least you don't, when it's booting up, it doesn't try to initialize and boot and whatever. I'll probably go, there is a USB 3 on this machine, of course, so it gives you flexibility. You can install a 2.5 gigabit network dongle on it, which you can't do on the Gen 7, for example. So yeah, I'm going to disable what I'm not going to do. One major thing that I think the server doesn't do is you can't boot from a drive. The server will always boot from drive number 1 on either of the two ports. One is the main one that goes to the backplane, and one is let's call it the DVD drive port. It's always going to be drive 1. There's no way to say boot from this drive. I find it weird on this very comprehensive BIOS, but that's it. There is also an option for cooling. If your server is too noisy, you can try and decrease the cooling, obviously at your own risk, though for now I haven't really felt any lots of warmth coming from this thing, but you can change these things. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with the amount of options in here. There is one option which is very important, I think I'd like to change now. I read online that basically in order to use the SATA port, which is on the motherboard, which is designed for the DVD drive, you have to put a server into legacy mode, and that's going to be under System Options. You have SATA Controller Option and Embedded SATA Configuration. And obviously, yes, it says don't do that if you care about what you have on the drives. And you basically have Enable Dynamic HP Smart Array B120i RAID support, or then you have Enable SATA Legacy support or SATA AHCI support. I don't think it needs to be on Legacy. I think AHCI should be okay. And I believe that by doing that, I'm not sure whether you're losing the RAID capability of the drive, which I'm not going to use anyways. I want the drives to be directly accessible by the OS. For that, I'm going to use my own card. I guess you can still use the onboard controller drive with TrueNas or OpenMedia Vault, and the legacy support or AHCI is probably what you want. It's some sort of IT mode. So the RAID drive is not the RAID feature is not being used, and everything is done via software, which is what you want. You don't want RAID 5, hardware RAID 5 nowadays. But if you use the third option there, you won't be able to boot from the optical drive SATA port on the motherboard. Now I've restarted the server and I'm back on that little graphical booting interface. I'd like to show you the intelligent provisioning feature, and what that is, if I understand correctly, the server is booting an OS from a little NAND which is on the board. I think it's the same that hosts the ILO. That's it, F10 intelligent provisioning. You can see the highlighters, so you know it's going to happen at some point. And that's basically running Linux. And from there, you can do a number of things. You can update the server, of course, and I think we're going to try that later. And you can also access the web interface to control the drive controller. And there we go. The server is booting from the intelligent provisioning. We'll make sure that that is also up to date. That's it. It's an actual operating system stored, embedded onto the motherboard, which you can use for a number of tasks. Once again, I don't have a hard drive on this server, so I'm booting Linux from the motherboard. You could see for a moment Mozilla Firefox, so obviously this is a web interface. Now, the first time you start this thing, it will ask you for the language, the networking interface, the keyboard language and everything, except it's done it by itself. It's asking me to register the server, which I don't care, so I'll say register later. There we go, and we have a couple of options, configure and install or perform maintenance. Now, if I'm selecting configure and install, the system will basically let me know that there are no hard drives connected, so there's nothing to configure, there's nothing to install. But I understand that from here you can install an operating system. But to be honest, I was looking for the drive controller, which I thought it was here. Maybe I'm mistaken, but since we're here, let's take a quick look at perform maintenance and see what's inside. And we have a number of options: firmware update, diagnostic, ILO configuration, erase, quick config. Oh, there it is, HP Smart Storage Administrator. Oh, it says no controllers detected. Oh, I think I know why. I think I might have disabled it. Yes, I disabled it in the BIOS. Let's quickly go back to the BIOS. I think it's disabled somewhere. So I'm going to close this and restart. There we go. My bad. I had disabled the controller here. So back to enable, and let's go back to the intelligent provisioning and see if the option is there. And yes, of course, the controller is now here. I guess this is more or less the same page you are entering. We're accessing when you press at F5 at post, and we have a configure button here. And you can do your stuff. You can see devices, you can configure arrays and everything. It's a RAID controller, it's the usual suspect. And that's it. And this is running from the motherboard. Okay, so I think this is amazing. Is that needed? I'm not sure. Are you going to use it? Probably not. The ILO, I think, is a good thing. You can go on holiday knowing that if your server powers off for whatever reason, well, you can access the ILO and turn it back on or restart it to do something. That being said, if you're going away on holiday, maybe you just want to enjoy your holiday and not worry too much about your NAS at home. But that's another story. Tons of options, but I think I'm done with showing you around for now. The next option would be to try and boot Linux. I have a little SSD in here, and I'd like to boot Linux from this one and do a quick benchmark. And just record the baseline of the server, and then we'll start doing some updates. So let me turn this off. That's it, the server is switched off. Now I'm going to unplug it. This thing is always kind of powering. ILO is always running in the background, so you might want to be careful about that. Now here I got, it should be an SSD adapter for these drives, but I found that, you know, in a pinch you can actually slide this into the SATA slot and it won't fall. Obviously not for permanent use, but for a quick test that would be okay. But I found this, and this should fit pretty nicely here. There we go, that's pretty nice. And as I said, let me remove the door. I'm going to install it in slot 1, because I believe this is the only one that can actually boot anything on this server. Either this one or the SATA port on the motherboard. Now, once again, because I have the RAID controller enabled, the operating system won't see the drive. The drive will need to be a RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, whatever. It won't be seen as a drive. So I'll have to go back into the BIOS and set it to either legacy mode or AHCI mode. I think AHCI is going to work. I don't really know the difference, to be honest. So I'm going to enable SATA AHCI support and then just exit the BIOS. And the SSD is now being listed while the controller initializes, so that is absolutely great. And there we go, I got Ubuntu running. I did prepare this SSD in advance, so it's got all the bits. The last thing I want to do is just to bother you to death with me trying to fiddle with Ubuntu here. And I downloaded and installed in Linux this little software. It's called Passmark Performance Test Linux version 11.0.1004. It's one I found. There's probably something better. I don't know. I don't really care too much. I just want to have an idea what kind of speed I'm getting from the server now, what speed I'm getting later when it's up to date, and what you get from an N40L. So let me start all the tests. So that's going to be A. And I'm getting 1471 for the CPU, 1173 for the memory. Let me just run it again to make sure that these values are consistent. Well, second pass is giving something lower, 1151, 1062. Let me disconnect the network. I mean, this is not Windows, right? So Linux, this is a basic version of this, a minimal installation of Linux. So it shouldn't really do anything without me telling anything. I don't feel the fan speeding up, so I don't think the system is overheating. We can check with the temperature. Let me run it another couple of times and see what happens. Now, I've run the test a few times with the network disconnected, and I've changed the test duration to long, and the test has been pretty consistent with CPU at 1480-ish and memory mark at 1071-ish. So I think these are the values. Now, it's time to run some upgrades. Now, before I run an upgrade, I'd like to make a backup of my ILO advanced key. Now, once again, you can find one online apparently, but I have my own key here. I'd like to save it. Now, to make a backup of the key, apparently there is a backup option in the ILO, but it just doesn't show up here on my ILO. And I had a look online, I asked AI, I checked online, and it took me a while. I believe there is a little dip switch here on the motherboard, and dip switch number 1 is setting the ILO to maximum security. And when it's set to maximum security, the backup feature, backup and restore feature, are disabled. And my understanding is you just need to flip the switch and suddenly the backup option would appear into the ILO. Now, without wasting too much time on that one, now someone here on Reddit mentioned that if I'm going to this address, and I'll have to replace the IP address with my ILO IP address, well, the key should show up. So let's find out. Oh yeah, there we go. That is my key. Obviously, I'm going to blur it because I don't want to share it with the world. But that's it. That's my key. So if you need a backup of your ILO advanced key and your backup is not working, well, that is the way. So let me take a backup of this. Now let's move to upgrading this box. There are a number of files online on the HPE websites, and it's not entirely clear to me which is which I need to do, and most importantly, how many upgrades I need to run on the system. So I'm going to start with a file I found online. It's called the SPP, the Service Pack for ProLiant. ProLiant is a very generic series line from HP. It's not just the microserver, it's just different sizes of servers. But the service pack should take me to a good baseline, and then I'll move from there and we'll see what happens. This should be pretty much automatic. It should tell me what needs to be updated and what doesn't need to be updated. And it's an ISO. It basically I need to boot the microserver from that one. Now, one option is to make a USB stick, get into the boot menu and say I want to boot from the USB. But some people online, on Reddit mostly, they said, well, you got ILO advanced, what boot from ILO? I've never tried it myself. I'm really curious. I will try and boot from the ISO, which is on my laptop, on the server, which is standing by me. And we'll see what happens. And I understand I need to go on remote console, launch the remote console. I don't want to launch it, yes. Session had timeout, so I need to re-log in again. There we go. I mean, the server is currently in Linux, so obviously I don't see anything here. But I understand oh, there you go. Actually, no, I do see everything. Oh, I do see Linux. I didn't realize you could see graphic. with the remote console. Amazing. So virtual drives, image file. There we go. I can just select whatever I need from here. Okay, so I got the image mounted. Well, it's mounted. It's mounted to the hardware. Well, number one, I mean, does Linux see it? Yes. Would you look at that? I mean, what blows my mind is I'm navigating into Linux using my Windows laptop, which is connected via network through ILO. And the server, the Microserver Gen 8, can see an ISO file, which I loaded via network from my laptop. This blows my mind. It's absolutely super impressive. Okay, well, let's restart this thing. And power off, restart. I can do this here. I mean, yeah, I don't need to use this keyboard now. And can I put it full screen? Oh, wow, look at that. Amazing. Okay. I'm very enthusiastic about that. I'm sorry. So restart, yes. And once I'm restarting, I guess I will just tell the server to boot from USB. All right, I'm into the boot menu with F11 and I'm going to boot from where? Is this going to be detected as CD-ROM? Is this as being detected as... I think it's been detected as CD-ROM because under virtual drive I have image files, CD-ROM, DVD. Let's try CD-ROM. Yes. Oh, this is so amazing. Okay, let's go with... I don't want to go with the automatic firmware update. Let's go with the interactive. I want to see what happens. Okay, that was so unnecessary. Once again, this is happening via network. So this is the system is booting from my NAS, by the way, which is in the other room. I mean, this is so complex. And I'm watching this on my screen, but this is not VGA. This is the video over network. Impressive. With a machine which I paid 60 quid. I am so impressed. And I have three options: firmware update, the storage administrator, and inside diagnostics. So let's go to firmware update. And the system is suggesting 3 steps: inventory, review, and deployment. Okay, this is an automatic process. It's still working on it. I'll have to give it time. All right, step 1 is complete. We go update required. So let's click on next. And here we get all the available updates and whether we can do that, force it. And there is not much. And I'm thinking I'm wasting my time with the SBP because I only have three items. The first one, which is selected, is the ILO, and is detecting version 2.50, and he's recommending 2.50. Well, recommend. He's got 2.55 available, but I believe we have like 2.70, 80 something available. As I said, 2.60 is really important. So I don't really want to go to 255, and then I'm going to install to something else. Then we have a network interface. NX1 is the network adapter, which there is a 2.17.6, but it doesn't say which version is installed. What happens if I click in here? Well, in this case, it says that the MVM, which I don't know what it is already up to date. Active version is already up to date, so that's not really required. And the firmware also is already up to date. So this is very cool. Obviously, from a system administrator point of view, you got one ISO file, you stick it in, you say automatic update, you walk away, you come back, it's done. But I don't think that's what I want to do. I don't want to do that. So let me get all the firmware I can find online. So I think it's going to be the ILO, the main system BIOS, then we have the network adapter, and then we have the drive controller firmware, and we might also get an update for the how is it called, the provisioning thing, the integrated Linux that you can run. Let me find out. It's a big, large website full of files, and yes, let me just try and write down what versions I've got right now, so at least I can compare with the ones I find online. I'll gather all my stuff and I'll come back to you. All right, so I'd like to show you what I found about firmware. It's not simple and it's quite confusing, which is kind of expected. Even on Reddit, when I asked, can you tell me what firmware do I need to find? They said to go ahead with the SPP, the service pack for ProLiant, but as you could see, it wasn't really doing much. So now this is the web page where you can download everything for the Gen 8. I have selected the firmware, and you have a number of things, because obviously you have one component, like in this case is the ILO for 4 different platforms. You have Windows, you have Linux, you have VMware, lots of stuff obviously to run the update, and it's quite confusing because you got version 282, then you have something storage controller, which doesn't apply on this one. It's a different controller, I'll tell you in a second. The simplest way I found, well, number one, you might want to just select one operating system, so at least you don't have all the duplicates. Then when it comes to the, for example, ILO here, it says 282. If you click on it, on the left-hand side, you have all the previous versions, so you can compare with what you have. Now, we are on version 2.50, so as you can see, it's quite a few versions ago, and we can go straight to 2.82, with 2.60 be the important one that we wanna have to prevent the wear out of the NAND. So this makes things a bit clearer, because I know I'm in 250. I can see the Resus 250 here, so I know that this update applies to my case. Now that was the ILO. When it comes to the storage controller, I understand that this storage controller doesn't have a dedicated firmware. It's embedded into the BIOS, so we don't have to worry about it. By upgrading the BIOS, we are also upgrading the controller, assuming it comes with an update. But when it comes to the network interface, there is an update, and that took me absolutely ages. The interface on this unit, at least the one I have, I'm not entirely sure whether there are slightly different variants with different interfaces. It's a Broadcom NX1. Is that NEC Stream, if I'm not mistaken? Now, once again, is this the latest one or no, whatever? You just click on one. And on the left-hand side, you have all the options. So now you know that the latest one is 2.29.0, which is April 2022. And I can't really remember where I found the version of the NIC interface, because it's not into the ILO. Here into the ILO, it says firmware not available on adapter 2, and on adapter 1, it doesn't really show it. Under firmware here, the NIC is not listed. Most of the other things are, but not the NIC. And under device inventory, the NIC is listed, but not the firmware. I think I found it on the SPP when it was trying to tell me there is an update for the network interface, which is not required. And when I clicked on more view details, it showed me all the versions. I took some notes, and I know. Number one, that my network interface is the HP332i, which is here. So I know that this applies to the 332i, and I remember I have a note that says 1.39, so this is 1.42. And to go to 1.39, which one is it? There we go, we got 1.39 with 2.17.6, which is another version I found. I think it was on the same page. I can't really remember. And it was mentioning a driver of some sort of 17.4.41. That's it. This software package contains combo image 17.4.41. So I'd imagine we are on version 2.17.6, and we can install 2.29.0. So that's quite an upgrade. It's a few years of upgrades. Now going back to the list, if you click on BIOS, then you have the system BIOS. Again, just select one system, so at least you don't have duplicates. And if I select it, on the left-hand side, you have all the options. And this is visible here on the ILO, you have on many pages, you have the system BIOS. J06 is the base firmware for this unit, so that's the family of BIOS, let's call it away. And that's I don't know if it's the 2nd of November or the 11th of February 2015. Well, I guess it's this one, October 24, 2016. So that's version 2015 11.02. And we have 3 more updates, 2018 and 2019. And I believe they only introduced, there's no improvements, of course, updated the Intel processor microcode to the latest version. And this one is probably the same thing. Oh, no, actually. Okay, yes, vulnerabilities, obviously. I mean, it's an old server, they're not introducing anything. But we can jump to the one from 2019. Finally, the intelligent provisioning, which is the operating system stored on the motherboard, is version 1.62.14. And if I'm going back here and if I'm looking for intelligent provisioning, I'm getting the recovery media. Once again, if you're not sure whether that is the latest version or not, just click on it and you have all the versions. We are on 1.64, if I remember right. No, 1.62.14, so that would be either this one or this one, and we can go up to 1.74. So that's another one that we can update. I would say let's begin with the BIOS, the ILO, and then we can do the NIC. I know that the BIOS and the ILO can be done from the ILO itself, though I might need to unpack the files into Windows to get the actual update file and then feed it to the ILO. And for the others, I guess we'll go into Ubuntu and run the Linux package. Let's see what happens, and let's hope that we don't break anything. The motherboard has a dual BIOS, but the network interface doesn't. I don't know, we'll see what happens. Now, thankfully, those packages, they have an extract option, so I can extract the actual update files from them and use the ILO to install them, so I don't need to do anything weird, because obviously this is the Windows package, which should be run on the server from a Windows operating system to run the update. Well, however, the extraction doesn't seem to be working. It's not doing anything. Right, okay, I was trying to use a network drive, and in 2026, Windows still sometimes doesn't like network drives, or some apps don't like network drives. Mind-blowing. Anyways, don't use a network drive to extract those files. Let me extract everything. All right, I've extracted the BIOS and the ILO. When it comes to the NIC, I think I have to do it from an operating system. We'll have a look later. Let's begin with the system file. I'm into ILO. And under administration firmware, it says here that I can update ILO firmware and server firmware. It doesn't really say that I have to specify which is which. So let me choose the system file first. And I'd imagine it's this CPQ J06. J06 is the family. And then we have 13.684. Let's see what happens. It's a bit scary that says updating the ILO firmware. I'm not updating the ILO firmware, but the page is clear. It says the following type of server firmware can also be updated from this page. So finger crossed and see what happens. Firmware update. Okay, something's happening. And that's it. Flash in firmware image. It seems to be working fine. And there's no other feedback. I can only imagine it's done. I had the console in the background. I think it was stuck on a boot loop because there was no booting device connected. Now it's doing that. Maybe it's supposed to be like that. I haven't got error messages. I haven't got anything. What happens if I'm going to overview? I still have the old firmware here. Maybe I need to give it some time. I don't know. Well, the ILO log here says firmware upgrade complete. So in theory, this should be it. I guess I'll give it a bit more time just in case, and then I'll restart the server. I mean, worst case scenario, we do have a backup BIOS on this motherboard. So hopefully not everything is lost. Well, apparently I do need a reset for the server, so we can do this from here, from the ILO, and I'll do a reset. And okay. Server is resetting. Let's see what we get in here. Oh yeah, and we have 2019. Yeah, everything worked. So I was panicking for no reason. We could just reset the server immediately. I would say, waiting a second doesn't really hurt. And I'd imagine if I come in here on overview, still on 2015, I think the ILO is still booting up and everything. And yes, after the ILO initialized on the server, you can see the system ROM. System ROM is now 2015, and the backup system ROM is 2015. And I'm gonna leave it to 2015 until I'm happy with it, with the latest one. But we definitely have the latest one installed. Now it's time to update the ILO, and it's exactly the same way. It's under administration, firmware, but this time I'm selecting the ILO file and not the BIOS. ILO is a bin file, it's a bit less scripted, ILO 4.282. This one is the one I'm really looking forward to install, so we are moving to 250 to 282. Upload. Okay. My ILO window has closed due to firmware upgrade, so that is totally fine. And this is taking a bit longer. It says here at the bottom, firmware flash update, progress 10%, 11%. It's a bit slower than the system BIOS upgrade. ILO has reset. Let's try and log in again. Right now I can't connect, so I'll give it a minute. Probably it's coming back. Yeah, it is coming back. And we are in, version is 2.82, and I still have my ILO advanced license. So happy days. This is just a very good start. We have the latest BIOS, we have the latest ILO. ILO, by the way, is 2023, so I'm impressed. I mean, this is only a few years old. And I believe the latest ILO introduces the HTML5 console, so yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have because of the NAND, though. So you definitely want to have the latest version. There we go, still everything is still working totally fine. Amazing, we still have two things to do. Well, the first one, I'd like to update the intelligent provisioning, even though I might never use it, but there is an update, why not? And then I'll have to find a way to update the network interface. That one, I really would like to have it up to date. Now, the intelligent provision recovery media is an ISO file, so my easiest way is to go back to the console. I think here, it is super easy, select the DVD here, local ISO file. That's it, and I can, attempting to boot from CD-ROM. So I just coded exactly when it was about to check, and it should boot from that one, and we'll see what happens because I've never done it myself. Well, this doesn't seem to be working, it's not doing anything. Not entirely sure what to do here. All right. So it just needed a reboot. I guess probably I mounted the file just last second, but it is working. I don't know which option I want, but let's go with the recovery media. All right, so I'm going to summarize the past couple of hours because otherwise this video gets super long. So updating the intelligent provisioning via ILO using an ISO connected to the ILO remote window failed. It failed with a NAND write error, which is something I was really concerned about because these servers, they do fail that way. The NAND wears out with that previous ILO version, and obviously once it's worn out, it won't recover. So I tried that again and it failed again, and eventually I thought, let me try with a USB stick. I tried a Balena etcher using writing the ISO to the USB stick. It wouldn't even boot, and eventually I found on the HP website there is a specific USB stick creator tool to make this kind of USB sticks, particularly for the recovery media for the IP. And that worked. Most importantly, it was so much faster than via network. So I guess the via network doesn't work. Maybe there's too much delay, too much latency. Also, one thing is I think I'm writing something which the ILO is using as well. At some point, the software does say you might lose the communication with the ILO. But if I'm using ILO to send you the software that you're going to use, maybe it's not the best idea. So the bottom line of these 2 hours is use a USB stick and use the HP USB creator software to make the USB, otherwise it won't work. It was pretty fast. It got stuck at like 80% for like a couple of minutes, but then it continued to 100%. And it seems to be working because now I have a complete different window. This is the how is it called again? Intelligent provisioning. Now it's asking me in text mode where I want to go rather than load that very long graphical screen and then telling me where I want to go. So I haven't tested it yet. So let's see what happens if I check if I start the intelligent provisioning. And yes, it seems to be working totally fine. And if I'm checking on the ILO, the intelligent provisioning is now listed at 1.74.2, which is the one I installed. So don't use the network. It kind of makes sense. You should probably prevent it from happening. Even if it could work, it was incredibly slow, and I'm not using Wi-Fi here, so there must be something that can work that way. So use a USB stick and use the HP tool to update. Great. So that is great. I think what I'm going to do later on, something I found online, I'm going to format that NAND to make sure it does format, and then I'll reinstall the intelligent provisioning to make sure that the NAND is still in good shape. Especially if you're purchasing a server which says it's working, you want to make sure that the NAND is working. 'Cause if it stops working, if it fails, the only way is to get the hot test station and remove the BGA chip, which is not for everybody, not even for myself. So I will triple check that that is working. But so far, we got the BIOS up to date, we got the ILO up to date, we got the intelligent provisioning up to date. The final step would be the network interface. That will happen, hopefully, from Linux. Right, I got the microserver back into Linux, into Ubuntu, and I've got all the interfaces wired in. The instructions somehow say to make sure that all the interfaces are up. I also have the ILO connected. I do see there is a separate Broadcom chip. I don't think this is the one being updated. I think this is looked after ILO, but just to be on the safe side, I got them all connected. And here in Linux, I can only see two interfaces. That's another cue that I'm not gonna work on the ILO one, and they both say up, though they both show the same IP address. So I don't know, I'd imagine maybe there's some setting somewhere that says that those interfaces are supposed to be like trunked together or one backup of the other one. I don't know, but I guess as long as they're up, it's fine. And then configuration, that's another story. Now, this is an RPM file, and the HP website says this is working with Red Hat Linux, but I had a look online. Apparently, it's supposed to be working with any Linux. I'm not a Linux person, so please don't shout at the screen too much. I'm probably going to be doing something completely wrong here. I'm just going to follow the instruction here. I'm going to run this RPM command, which is extracting the package. So that's a command. Let's run it. And we don't have RPM, so I guess I'll have to find a way to install it. Bear with me. As I said, I'm not a Linux expert, so I had a look online, and it looks like you can convert this RPM file into a Debian file, and then you can run it. Now, I'm concerned, obviously, I don't want to tinker too much with the firmware upgrade software, but this is not really the firmware upgrade. It's just extracting the files, and then there is a file that you need to run inside that extracted archive. So let me try the software I need to install. It's called Alien. So let me try and install it. Right, quick change of plan. Instead of trying to make the RPM work with Ubuntu, I went with Rocky Linux. There is a USB trial file that you can download, and basically boots from the USB stick. Just a little word of advice, don't try version 10. Version 10 doesn't work on this server because I think it needs V3 Xeon processor or something like that. So you need to download the version 9, and that works totally fine. I've already copied the RPM file onto the download folder, and I believe that now we can actually follow the instructions on the HP website. And this is working, perfect. So the file should have been uninstalled, and the instructions say to use another command to find out where it was uninstalled, even though I'd imagine it would be here. No, okay, so we need to find out where. RPM, by the way, stands for Red Hat Package Manager, so it's the equivalent of APT in other distributions. That's why it's better to actually use it with the distribution where it belongs to. There we go. The instructions say to find the HP setup, which is under USR libx blah blah blah, that one. So let me get to that folder, and we'll try and run this setup. Finally, it's taking quite some time. Yeah, found the HP setup, and we just need to run it. Well, permission denied. Okay, let's run it with sudo. Okay. What? Oh, one thing. I forgot to plug back the Ethernet. I have a feeling that's probably why I think the system is not seeing the adapter for whatever reason, because this is a Broadcom NX1. So let me bring them up again. I disconnected them at some point while I was doing whatever I was doing. Let's try this again and see what happens. No. Oh, come on. Seriously? All this time? And then he's telling me that's not the right package? Seriously? Well, the Ethernet ports are definitely up, so I guess I'll have to look into that. Oh my. This is not what I was expecting after many hours. You only see a few minutes here, but this is many hours of trying and failing. All right, well, I will need some guidance, so I posted the question on Reddit. Meanwhile, I really would like to go ahead and do the hardware update, and I'll do the NIC update later on if and when I get to a point where I understand how to run this thing. So let's turn this off. Let's take the motherboard out so we can have a look, including myself, and we can replace the CPU and update the RAM, and hopefully everything will work. Just a couple of tests before upgrading the hardware of the board. I just rerun the performance test after the BIOS update. I was curious to see whether we could see any performance degradation, and the answer is no. I consider the test. It really depends on whether the server has been rebooted or not. It doesn't change a lot, but it does a little bit. But after a fresh reboot and with the network disconnected, the values are basically identical to what they were before, so there is absolutely no change. And as a final test, I'm running Y Cruncher just to make sure what kind of thermals we're getting with the CPU, which is, by the way, using the factory thermal paste, I guess. I'm running the BBP test on Y Cruncher, and the temperature is not going over 50 degrees, and I got the case back on, obviously, for extra ventilation. It was actually 52, now it's back to 50. So it looks like with this CPU and this heatsink, the thermals are totally fine. I'm curious to see what happens with the new CPU, which I believe is rated 45 watts, which is 10 watts over the maximum rating of the heatsink. Apparently, it's supposed to be fine, but I will be running the same test later on, and we'll see what kind of thermals we're getting. Alright, this is a proper server. I really love it. The motherboard comes out from a tray here at the back, and obviously in order to remove the motherboard, I'll have to disconnect everything. So I got here the power supply, of course. Let's not break everything. I'd imagine this hasn't been removed since the board was manufactured, so it's a bit stiff. Not sure how much it's going to work. I'm going to use some of my lubricated contact cleaner. Actually from the top. There we go. Okay. Then we have, of course, the SAS the SAS cable here, which we are not going to reuse on this motherboard. And then we have a little temperature sensor. There's a little sensor just there, which is sensing the air coming inside the server. And I don't think this has a clip. There we go. I don't see anything on this side anymore, so we can move to the other side. And here we got the RAM, which can stay, though I'm going to remove it. Well, we're going to remove it anyways. We're going to swap it for more RAM. There is one connector here. So I think these are the USB ports at the front. It's very overexposed, but it comes with a blue catch. So I'd imagine I need to pull that blue wire and see what happens. That's very clever. And that's it. I think the motherboard is free to go. Do we have a screw somewhere? I don't see any. Oh, sorry. There is another connector here, which I didn't see. And this is for the fan. Okay, it's identical to the front one, but this has clips at the side. It's the little connector there, which needs to be squished and pulled out. There we go. I'm a bit puzzled that this motherboard doesn't have a screw somewhere to just keep it in place. No, it doesn't. Oh, well, HP was optimistic. There we go. Motherboard is out. There's a little bit of dust inside, but nothing horrible, so we can take a look later on. And here is the motherboard. Obviously, you've got CPU down here. We've got the ILO chip. That, I don't know what it is. It says CPLD. I really don't know what that is. We have the PCI Express port, the SD card reader, well, the socket, a USB socket for convenience, power supply, the optical drive SATA connector. These are the little jumpers I was mentioning earlier on where you set the security of the ILO. It actually feels pretty cool that you have physical jumpers on the motherboard which affect the way the software is working. It's quite cool. 2 memory slots, the battery, which I'm going to replace, and I do see there is a TPM module, so I'm not sure I need it, but I guess this can actually install operating system which require TPM. It's pretty compact. I think I'd like to remove these heatsinks. There might be some thermal paste underneath, so I'll have to remove the motherboard from the frame itself. But let's free up the CPU first. Right, I think the heatsink is a bit stuck. So if I try and remove it, I'm probably going to damage... Oh, no, okay, it unstuck itself. So maybe with the other NAS, I might want to use some hot air before I do that. But this has been on for a while, so I thought whatever happened... Oh, yeah. There we go, we got thermal paste. It doesn't look like in a horrible shape. Oh, no, it's completely dry. So I guess that CPU is very much low power because it wasn't getting hot at all. I guess, I don't know, it's kind of very, well, no, I would say it's very dry. Yeah. Right, let's remove the thermal paste. We have our Celeron G1610T, as expected. Now, before I remove the processor, obviously the socket is quite delicate. I want to do the other heat sinks. So in order to do that, yeah, I'll have to remove the motherboard from the frame. There we go, and the motherboard comes fully out. So we can give a clean to this one. It's a bit dusty, but not horribly dusty. And I can try and remove these two. Right, so this is kind of soft, should come off okay. Maybe I'll use a little bit of hot air anyways. They might have used that pink paste that gets really hard over time. This feels very sturdy. But these are plastic, whatever they're called, so it should be easy to remove. Yeah, it's much softer now, and let's see what happens if I try and remove the heatsink from here. I need to be careful because there's quite a lot of very small seeds, I'd call them, SMD components. So easy to just remove one, damage one without even noticing. Alright, well the heatsink is scorching hot, but this is not coming off. I guess it's again one of those thermal plastic pastes. There we go, a little bit of isopropyl has worked like a charm. It's actually thermal paste, so that needed to be replaced. What was stuck was the little foam that they installed around the core, if you want to call it that way. So that definitely needed to be replaced, because the thermal paste it's not too bad, actually, probably was still working, but I'd like to put another one, put new one. And this one might be more complicated, I don't know, I kind of feel... These are probably the VRMs for the CPU. Well, they're definitely the VRMs for the CPU. And I don't know, they don't feel like they're moving at all. Let me try with a little bit of heat. I'm using 100 degrees right now, so it's really safe for those capacitors. Now let me unclip this plastic clips. There we go, number one. Number two is very close to NIC, I need to be careful. And number two. Okay, now this is very stuck. Let's try with some isopropyl again. There we go. All right, yes, so we have a little thermal pad in here. I might have this size. That's no big deal. And it was really sticky, so you need hot air and isopropyl alcohol. Yeah, but this is like 0.5 millimeter. I should actually have it. We have 9 components, 9 MOSFETs or whatever they are, and yeah, you can see from the footprints. So I'm going to clean this part and replace everything, and then we're going to replace the CPU, replace the thermal paste everywhere. That should be it. So let's get started. Now the thickness of this pad is not really a problem because the heatsink is on springs, but this is a 0.5 millimeter, and I do have 0.5 millimeter, decent quality actually, so I'm happy to use it here. I'd imagine you can use thermal paste. I don't see why you shouldn't. I don't know, they put some thermal pads here, let's go with thermal pads. For this chip here, whether it's the North Bridge or the South Bridge, I guess maybe it's the South Bridge, I'm going with MX4, regular thermal paste. There you go, even a little bit too much, but should be okay. And replacing the heatsink should be fairly easy. It's just a matter of pressing these plastic clips. Last famous words. Hello. 1, 2. There we go. And this is done. Let me get my 0.5 millimeter thermal pad. I've got this one, which I purchased so long ago, because I was planning to replace the one on my GPU. And then I decided it was not worth the risk. It's from AliExpress, so who knows if it's, it says scratch to check here, so maybe it is a good one. But because I never use it with anything, let's use it with something I care about. I mean, this is going to be my main NAS. So here's the pad. Half? It doesn't look like half. It's more than 1 millimeter. I guess by this, oh yeah, okay, by the time oh right, okay, there is more or less a 0.5 millimeter of plastic on top, yeah, 0.3 millimeter of plastic, plus the blue one on top. Right, let me just cut a little slice that fits in here. And there it is, that's what I need. So let me apply it on the heatsink. Let me give it another quick clean. No, I broke it. Right, okay. Failed, big fail. Okay, this is more like a putty. It's not a thermal pad. I mean, yeah, it's a putty. That's all right, it works for me. I didn't know, that's probably why it's so difficult to apply. So I'd imagine the plan would be to try and remove the top layer first, which is quite thick. It's a thick plastic thing, so that the blue plastic layer at the back is holding the putty together. And then just, yeah, probably I can do this. Yeah. And then apply this on the heatsink. Okay. It's very fragile. Okay, there we go. And now removing this very thin blue layer is going to be simpler. I shouldn't have said that now. Okay, there we go. And finally, we can install it. I guess this is probably completely unnecessary. I mean, this is such a low power system, though the new CPU is a bit more powerful. It's only, I mean, it's 45 watts. So it's nothing horrible, but there we go. And now we just push these clips back in. 1, 2. Okay. Yeah, this. I mean, it could have been 1 millimeter. It's totally fine. There's plenty of spring tension in there. Right. Now, ideally, I'd like to, test this motherboard now that I've tinkered with it. But I think I'm going to be brave. I'm going to replace the CPU and the RAM all together, put it back in, cross my fingers, and hope for the best. Let me just make a little bit of space here on my desk. And the battery is not too bad, but obviously it can be replaced. So let me get a fresh one. Yeah, there we go. Brand new battery and happy days. Right, let's remove the CPU. Oh, we need oh, come on. We need the Torx here. No, we don't need the Torx. What am I doing? I was about to dismantle the whole thing. Whew, okay. It's the usual lever, of course, or lever, depending which part of the world you're living. Okay, Celeron out. And once again, I got this from AliExpress. They honestly look brand new. Or if they have been used, nothing really nasty happened, unless they washed them. But to me, they look absolutely brand new. There we go. And this is Intel Xeon E3 1265L V2. L stands for low power, so we don't overload this pool heatsink too much. And hopefully should give a pretty generous boost in performance. We will see in a minute if it works. Oh, let me clean since I'm here, let me clean the bracket here from thermal paste. Right, let me clean the heatsink, put some new thermal paste, and then we are good to go. Oh, of course, the back plane needs to be in. Well, the how do you call it? The tray needs to be in. Where is it? And finally, let's get some contact cleaner into the RAM slots. This is lubricated contact cleaner, is my favorite. And I have these RAM modules which I purchased for the Microserver G7. So they should work because it's exactly the same. These are 8 gigabytes ECC unregistered, so it's 12800E. And this should work. Apparently what works on the G7 should work on the G8 as well. These are the modules I'm installing, so for your reference, put a link maybe down below in the description if they work. There we go. I think this is ready to go back into its case, and I'm really curious to see if everything works. We've done maybe a few too many things at the same time. I don't know, it's kind of for fun, and we'll see what happens. So let's put it back into the case, let's turn it on and see if it works. Now the case was clearly cleaned by the server, but there's definitely some leftovers in the most inaccessible places where the motherboard was covering it. So I'm going ahead with air compressor and a vacuum cleaner and just remove those fur balls basically. All right, I'm really curious. Will it work? Will the motherboard still work? Will the CPU be detected? Will the RAM be compatible? Once again, lots of things at the same time, which is never ideal. I'll cross my fingers and we'll see what happens. Power to the unit now. So we have lots of stuff powering up in here. And as I said before, it takes a while for this thing to get finally able to turn on. So I'll give it like 30 seconds. And let's power on. 3, 2, 1, go. It's powering on, it's clicking, it's doing something. Yes, we got the early processor initialization, so things are working. At least the CPU is definitely working, because otherwise you wouldn't have code being executed. Now let's see what happens. Okay, yeah, it switches off, yeah. This is normal. I don't understand why it kind of resets itself sometimes during this process, but sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does not. 16 gigabyte installed, everything seems to be working amazing, and we have our Xeon E3 1265L V2 at 2.5 gigahertz. Wow, okay, what's that? Memory configuration changed. Okay, that was some quick test from HP that says I'm changing the memory configuration. Amazing, I'm super happy, everything seems to be working. Now let me get into Ubuntu, and it's time to see how much processing power we've gained with this upgrade. Well, kind of bad news. I think my Linux has crashed. It was booting up. I could see it was processing some changes. I guess it detected the different CPU, maybe, the different RAM. Now I have a black screen. I don't know. It could be my capture device, but it seems to be working fine. It's not great. It's not what I was expecting. Let me power cycle it. I don't think my keyboard is even working. The caps lock is not working, though I've seen that before earlier on. Oh, no, wait. It was still doing things. Oh, now it's restarted. It was just taking forever doing something, and I just restarted it in the middle of it. Oh, well, okay. Well, everything was working. Keyboard was working. I don't know what was doing, but I just had to be a bit more patient. Well, Linux came up with all sorts of error messages and crashes, but eventually started fine, and now it starts without delays. I have a feeling this was due to the iGPU inside the new CPU, which is different from the one in the Celeron. So maybe Linux had to replace the drivers and it didn't realize it. The graphic interface was crashing, was not loading actually, while the terminal was working, even though at some point Linux completely crashed in front of me. But anyways, it's working fine. I've restarted a couple of times, no issues issues whatsoever, so I'm assuming it's fine. And I've run the performance test. And I'm super happy because we've increased 4 times compared to the previous Celeron CPU and twice as time the RAM speed. Now, this is an N40L. Now, granted, this is actually running OpenMedia Vault, it's got drives in it. I don't really have a working N40L which I can use for testing, but it's not really doing anything. It's there idle, but we have to keep that in mind. And these are the numbers that the N40L is delivering consistently when I'm running the performance test. So with this machine, with the Xeon processor, we basically have a CPU which is 9 times faster and the RAM which is 3 times faster than the N40L. The N54L probably will reduce the gap a little bit, but I'm super happy. This machine, according to this test of course, is about 10 times faster than the N40L. Absolutely, absolutely fantastic. Now I can totally see that the CPU is getting pretty hot. I had to put the lid on because at some point while I was running a number of tests to make sure that they were consistent, one test came up a bit on the slow side and I realized that the CPU was pretty toasty, though the fan was not speeding up a lot. So, but as you might have noticed, there's plenty of options in the BIOS to set that up. So let's see what kind of temperature we are getting on this CPU when you're running Y-Cruncher. Now with the lid on, in idle, the CPU is running totally fine, around 40 degrees with about 20 degrees in here. Let's stress test and see what happens. Well, and after a few minutes of the test running, which is cycling, so in between the cycles the CPU momentarily stops and it cools down, I can see the temperatures are going down to around 70, 71 degrees maximum. The fan is really not speeding up, so maybe this is something that can be set somewhere, maybe in the BIOS, maybe we can control that with some software. Also, I really haven't got hard drives at the front, so most of the air is probably coming through the hard drive cavity with less air going down where the CPU is. I'd imagine once the hard drives are there would be more air coming in front of the CPU. We got 73 now. I think considering this is Y-Cruncher, I mean, it's kind of the worst case scenario. That's telling me that the heatsink is fine. With the fan running at minimum and 20 degrees in here, the CPU is probably fine and the heatsink is okay for this kind of CPU. And as I said, if you want the faster CPUs with higher TDP, well, you definitely need, I mean, if this one is getting to 73, a warmer CPU will probably get to 80 plus, and it's not going to work. Once again, this is Y-Cruncher. So if you're using this for a NAS or like light tasks, you're never going to get to 74 degrees. Yeah, it's getting a bit higher than before. I guess if we keep running it, eventually we'll, I don't know, 76 maybe? I don't really know. I think it's still acceptable. And once again, the fan is still a minimum speed, so there must be some setting somewhere, either in the OS or in the BIOS, to maybe increase this, because I would definitely want the fan to run a bit faster when my CPU is getting a 74, 75 degrees. Great, I am really happy. By the way, the CPU is working, the RAM I know is working, the CPU was the question mark from AliExpress. Well, it seems to be working fine, especially with Y-Cruncher. I'm really, really happy with this. The next step would be to install the LSI card. Before do that, I think I'd like to take out the power supply, take a look inside in case there's a big furball as we found in the server, and I need to do a little mod to one of the connectors because I'd like to install an additional SSD with the TrueNas on it or whatever software I'm going to use, and I can't use the one that is currently installed. I'll show you why in a second. Do not open power supplies if you don't know what you're doing. There are lethal voltages inside these things, and capacitors can still be charged with, I don't know, 300 and something volts. So unless you know exactly what you're doing, don't open a power supply. This is not a tutorial, but I'm really happy I opened it because, yeah, it's okay. It was definitely cleaned. But there is a little bit of fluff inside, so why not? I'll give it a clean. And what I'd like to do now, I want to install an SSD with, say, TrueNas, and the SSD will just stay on the top of the case where the optical drive is supposed to be. I don't care about the bracket. I'm sure you can 3D print one or buy one or whatever. For now, it's going to be there. Now, the thing is, This power supply literally comes with 3 connectors. One is the motherboard, one is the hard drives, which goes into a loom, which is under the inside the chassis, and then eventually goes to the backplane. And then we have a floppy connector. So I'd imagine HP was selling those very slim optical drives, which are powered via a floppy connector. Now, I didn't realize we have one of these, so I could use a Molex splitter, and then from the Molex splitter go into a SATA adapter. But honestly, I have the Molex plugs here, and I have my own crimping tool and everything, which I purchased for another project, so I didn't purchase this for this. I don't think I will ever use this one, and this is basically wired at the top of the unit, exactly where I need it for. It was supposed to be for the optical drive. So I really would like to do something nice, and rather than go and disturb this one and have lots and lots of wires then coming from everywhere, I'm going to chop this off and crimp one of my Molex. So it will be another one of this. And then it will need an adapter. Appreciate it, but well, at least we're using this one. So let me blow the dust off using my air compressor, and then I'll replace this connector with another one. Oh, and by the way, all the capacitors look totally fine. I don't see any bulging or anything, so finger crossed this will last for quite some time. And power supply is done, and now I have 2 Molex connectors here. Now it's time to install the LSI card and to disconnect the backplane from the motherboard controller. I'll do the connection first because I don't think there's much space once the card is in here, is inside. Obviously the cable is very stiff, but we'll see what we can do here. There we go. Right, I really like how this came out. There's plenty of cable management clips, so everything looks really, really nice. I'm sure there is an appropriate way to have the SSD here without having it like this, but honestly, who cares? I mean, it's perfectly fine. I think you can fit 2 in here if you really wanted. I think I have another SSD here as a test. If you ever need another one, though, yes, it can fit 2 drives, though I don't think there is a port for the second. Well, actually there is, because obviously this LSI card has an empty slot, an empty port. It's going to be a bit tricky to plug something in, but you can actually plug 4 more drives into that slot. Amazing. Now, before I put some new hard drives in this thing, let me just run Linux, make sure it boots, and make sure the card is being detected from terminal. And then I have some pretty chunky drives to install in this machine. Yes, I can see the SSD being detected by the integrated disk controller. And let's see whether the Avago, I think is, controller card thing comes up on screen. Yes, Avago Technologies. I like that it's integrated into the little thing. We have a network boot that wasn't there before, but yeah, it's been initialized. I have no hard drives in there, so nothing's going to happen. Let's quickly get into Linux, make sure it shows up on the LSPCI, and then I'll get the drives and we'll populate this thing. And then it's almost ready, but the NIC, that needs an update. Well, I ended up having Linux issues again. It would fail to boot as before, and after many reboots, it comes up like this: system program problem detected. And I'd imagine if I ignore that and restart, it will be working totally fine. I don't know. Looking the logs, it looked like a graphic problem. I have a feeling I just want to reinstall Linux, considering the CPU has changed and the drive is not connected to one controller, is connected to another one. I thought Linux would be happy to reconfigure itself. I do not know. As I said, I'm not a Linux person. I'm hoping there is no system issues, but I'd say if there was an issue with the system, it wouldn't be so intermittent, but we'll see. But anyways, we are in. I can ignore all these messages. I think more will come up. Yeah, there's, as before, we have this error messages, experience internal problems, don't send. It will do it for a few times, then it stops. Fair enough. And then last time it works. But let's see. Well, obviously the SAS card is being detected. There we go. Wait a sec, because we also have the system card, which I need to disable at some point. There we go, LSI SAS 2008. Perfect. Now let me go back into the BIOS, disable the onboard RAID card, not the other one. I think the optical drive port is driven by a different controller. I'll have a look. But let me get some hard drives, and I have some pretty chunky hard drives, as I said. We'll populate this thing, and then I'll start doing some tests. And eventually, on another video, I'll install TrueNas and see how it works. And I'm going to break a pretty important rule of TrueNas: 1 GB of RAM for 1 TB of storage. Bear with me. I'm going to install 4 14 terabyte hard drives into this thing. These are SAS drives. They're not SATA, so they don't work on normal computers. And the plan is to make this server my main NAS. So all in all, you should end up with, considering a RAID Z1, so one of these drives is going to be redundant for redundancy, for safety, I should end up with 42 terabytes of usable space on a single machine like this. Now, why on earth would I need 42 terabytes? Well, number one, YouTube stuff and everything else. Bear in mind, I'm kind of a data hoarder, as in on my NAS and drives and stuff, I have my essays from where I was a teenager. When I was at school, when I had my first computer, I still have them. I like photography, and I'm using a full-frame camera. It's a Canon. I'm using RAW format, of course, so obviously that is taking space as well. The videos, don't get me started on videos, all my documents, all my old pictures, and everything. So I realized that I don't really have a good how can I say, layout of NASs and storage. Something is backed up online, the important stuff is backed up online, but not everything is backed up. And I'm really concerned that one day one of my NASs just really breaks down really badly, like the power supply kills all the drives, and that's it. That's the end of my data. So I'm going to have these NAS and another one, to be honest, an identical one. So that's going to be backup of the first one. And I've decided to go with 14 terabytes for 42. Obviously, that will last. It will give me quite a lot of headroom for a few years. Now, these are second-hand. They're not brand new, right? I found an eBay seller. It's pretty famous here in the UK. I can't remember the name. They sell refurbished drives. These are well used, but these are enterprise drives, so they should last quite a lot of time. And these are not like the other one I showed on another video. These are Western Digital 14 terabytes. They're supposed to be pretty reliable according to Backblaze. Well, the plan at some point is to have TrueNas, but what I want to do right now is to make sure that everything works and to run a full battery of tests on these drives. They come with warranty, 12 months of warranty, so if something happens, I want to know now. So I'm going to run smart tests, I'm going to run bad blocks, and then smart test again. It's going to take probably, I would say probably 10 days for this to finish, just for these 4 hard drives. So let me power everything off, and we'll make sure that these drives are being seen and everything is working totally fine. And then I guess, again, I'll install TrueNas on another video, or maybe off camera, whatever, because I imagine this video is already super long. But then before I close the video, I really would like to update the NIC of this system before I actually put this system into production. I think that's the technical jargon. I'm hoping that the power supply has enough juice for those drives. They're pretty heavy. And would you look at that, I got 4 12 terabyte hard drives being detected, plus the SSD. Everything worked totally fine. I didn't have to change anything. So yeah, this is amazing. They're not even particularly noisy. I guess they would be very noisy when they start seeking. Oh, there we go. That keeps coming up. So I guess I'll go ahead and reinstall Linux, because we've done quite a few changes. I'm sure if there's a Linux expert watching this video, it's going to be, oh, what you need to do is just this and that. Obviously, it's Linux. Linux is not Windows. You don't need to reinstall Linux. But I don't really know how to fix that. And it could also be my SSD. It's a very old one. I have no idea. I'm hoping it's nothing with the system. But I guess now it's time to, again, reinstall Linux, make sure everything works, start testing those drives. And at some point, I will install TrueNas on this SSD. And I will have the answer to the question, can I run a 42 terabyte RAID Z1 with only 16 gigabytes of RAM? My understanding is yes, as the rule of thumb that you find online that says 1 gigabyte of RAM for 1 terabyte of drive is very valid, don't get me wrong. But that's for, like, if you're a data center, you are accessing your storage like very heavily, there's a database on it, there's lots of users accessing it, then you can't really afford any slowdown. You want 100% performance. At that point, 1 gigabyte per terabyte is recommended. But I'm going to use this for random storage. My DaVinci Resolve database and the videos I'm working on are on an SSD directly connected on my computer, because this is 1 gigabit, it's pretty slow. So for basically storage and accessing a Word document every now and then, it's fine. I'm not expecting any particular speed, and it should be fine. If it's not, well, I'll think about it, whether, I'll move on from there. I might want to get a better box, or I might want to go with Open Media Vault or something non-ZFS which doesn't require those extra amount of capabilities and performance and RAM and everything. I would say I'm ready to close this video, but first I'll have to find out how to upgrade that network card. Stay with me. All right, I'm going to summarize the past, 24 or 48 hours, because this has taken quite some time. So after all those issues with Linux, I decided to go ahead and reinstall it. It didn't really sound right that Linux was unable to reconfigure itself for a new CPU, but it kept crashing. It kept crashing. Every now and then it would restart, it would manage to get through the graphical interface, it would come up with lots of error messages, and then another couple of reboots and it was on a black screen again. So I went ahead and I reinstalled Linux on the same SSD. I went with the latest version of Linux. It was at 24. I think I was on 22. It started fine. I restarted it and it was exactly the same. It started giving me system errors and another reboot and it was on a black screen again. So I think it was late in the night. I went to bed a bit disappointed because it's like, oh my gosh, what is it that is not working now on this microserver? Now, unfortunately, we updated the BIOS, the ILO, we removed the motherboard, we removed heatsinks, we replaced the CPU, we upgraded the RAM, we had a new SSD. There's so many things. Also, I think at the time I had the drives in, so I thought maybe it's a power supply issue. There's so many variables. So I decided to start from the basics, and I basically ran a mem test overnight, and it passed totally fine. I can't remember how many passes it managed to do, but everything was fine, no errors. And that was giving me a little bit of confidence that the system was fine. The RAM was probably fine, and the CPU is probably also fine, because, when you're transferring data, you also rely on the CPU. The CPU, by the way, worked fine running Y Cruncher a little time before when I showed you on camera. And I'd expect if a CPU running at 75 degrees, running Y Cruncher is not crashing, it's probably totally fine. So with that in mind, I thought this sounds like a disk issue, because Linux is starting, if something gets corrupted, and obviously Linux can't start anymore. So I was using this Intel SSD. I appreciate it's pretty old. It's a 320 series, 80 gigabytes. It's pretty old, but I think it only has a bunch of hours on top, and it's working totally fine. I went ahead and I grabbed this 90 gigabyte, which used to live in one of my other microserver, Gen 7. It's not being used right now, so I took it out, I plugged it in, and I started it, and it ran, and TrueNas was on it, and it was working totally fine. I restarted it a number of times, and it was working totally fine. So I took the Intel on my PC, I ran some extensive test, and it runs totally fine. I had a look online. It's not entirely clear, but it sounds like this microserver can be a bit fussy with SSD. So you might want to be aware of this, because since I installed this one, this has been running flawlessly. I ran some tests on TrueNas, more on that in a minute, and then I went ahead and wiped it, and I reinstalled Linux 24, Ubuntu 24, which has been working totally fine. So it was definitely an SSD issue, and from what I can understand, there's nothing wrong with these SSD. It's just a combination motherboard controller SSD that somehow doesn't work. So super happy that this is now working, touch wood, totally fine, because honestly, for you it's a few minutes here. For me, I think it was about 48 hours of testing and trying and reinstalling and come back and forth and restart and reboot and it would always fail. It wouldn't fail straight away, so it would take a little bit of time. Anyways, it seems to be working fine. Now, one quirkiness that I discovered with the latest Ubuntu version is that the ILO would work, but the mouse wouldn't work. And again, it took me a little bit of time to realize I had to disable the virtualization. How is it called? VT-D, something like that. It's in the BIOS. Once that was disabled, ILO started working totally fine. I'm not sure that's something they're gonna fix or anything, because this ILO firmware is from 2022, so you'd expect that to work, but it seems to be working fine. So that Linux is fine now, the system is totally fine. While I had TrueNas running, which obviously was complaining that the previous pool was not there and everything, again, I restarted it a few times, it was working fine. I thought, let me create a quick pool and see how it behaves with 42 gigabytes of storage. I created a pool, I restarted the system, everything was fine, and then I started copying some chunky files like Linux distributions, that kind of big, huge files that some test files I could find. Now, the NAS was completely empty, but it was behaving beautifully. The CPU was barely being used, all the temperatures were below 40 degrees. Yes, obviously the RAM is full, but the RAM is always full on TrueNas with ZFS. It seemed totally fine. And most importantly, the transfer speed was very stable at the maximum I can get. Again, this is 1 gigabit. So I'd imagine, again, I'll know more once I have more data on this NAS. But I have a feeling that 1 gigabyte per 1 terabyte is a very valid rule. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is not valid, is rubbish. But for my usage, single user and maximum 1 gigabit in or out from the server, that's probably too much. I will know later, but so far the NAS looked totally fine, both in writing and in reading. I think in writing the CPU is a bit more active, but I think it's below 10% all the cores. So it's really, I'm really super happy. If it stays like that when there are like 15 terabytes of stuff on it, I would be super happy. And finally, I think I got the answer for the network interface. Well, it turned out that despite I was on the Gen 8 download page, the file that I was using was for Gen 9 servers only. It was very big in front of me. I just didn't see it. To my justification, I was on a Gen 8 downloads and I didn't think of being aware that some of those downloads do not apply to this machine. And despite being the same network interface, the same IC, the same model, whatever you want to call it, well, I'd imagine the script was looking maybe for the machine ID and it didn't find what it was expecting and it was failing. So eventually I found another download, which seems to be for the Gen 8, and it matches what I already have on this machine, which is, by the way, what is on the SPP, the Service Pack for ProLiant. So it looks like the firmware for this machine, for the network interface, hasn't been updated in a while. I think the last one is 2016. So the latest version is on the SPP. And if the SPP says you don't need it, well, you don't need to worry about it, which I guess is a good thing. So with that done, I think the server is ready to go. The next step I'm going to do is to thoroughly test these drives before I actually create a pool and I start using them. So this is going to be under a desk for probably more than a week. Probably it's going to take 10 days or something. And then I'm going to start using it and hopefully, touch wood, it's going to work totally fine. Now, to wrap up what I think is going to be a very long video after the final editing, I think I'd like to share with you my conclusions. Is the Gen 8 worth the money, worth the time, or shall you stay on Gen 7? So what is my conclusion after this very long video? Is the Microserver Gen 8 worth the money? If you're on a Gen 7, is it worth upgrading to a Gen 8? Well, the microserver you've seen on this video has been running for about 2 weeks now. I fitted the hard drives. I've been testing those hard drives thoroughly. It's taken about 10 days. Now I've got TrueNas running on it. I've done a few tests, while the other microserver, which I'm going to show on another video focused just on how to upgrade the firmware of the microserver, is now testing the hard drive. So it's taken another 10 days to complete all the process. Now, I've done a little bit of testing with the microserver we worked on this video, and I have to say I am thoroughly impressed. I've even done some tests with encrypted datasets, because the Xeon processor I've installed in this video, well, it supports the encryption that TrueNas is using in hardware, so it's actually pretty efficient. For a storage box, I think I'm thoroughly impressed. The Xeon processor, 4 cores, 8 threads, it's only running maximum 20-25% when writing data on an encrypted partition. Now, with only 16 gigabytes of RAM, unfortunately, I have a feeling that you can't really do much more than basic storage and maybe run some basic apps. But obviously, when it comes to transcoding, virtual machines, I don't think the Gen 8 is the right machine for you. As I said, I paid the server £60. Granted, it's in its basic configuration, but the CPU was only £15-17, I think. Now, the RAM, I don't know nowadays how much money and RAM expansion would cost for that server, but when I bought it for the Gen 7, I think it was another £15. So we're talking about less than £100 for a more or less fully kitted Gen 8. And for that price, I feel that the Gen 8 is an incredible machine. It's really outperforming my NN40L, N54L, and obviously also my Netgear running an Intel E6660, I think, which I'm about to retire. Now, the Gen 8 is far from being perfect, of course. We found a few quirkiness in this video. It's fussy about SSDs, it's fussy about bootable USB sticks. It can only fit 16 gigabytes of RAM. And one thing I discovered after recording the video is that the fan control is actually not straightforward, because apparently the fan is controlled by the ILO. So there is apparently no simple way to just control it from Linux, like with fan control, for example. So it does come with limitations. And I can imagine you might have lots and lots of recommendations for like larger boxes, old boxes, pretty inexpensive, that could do so much more than a G8. But from my point of view, the selling point of the G8 is the compact footprint. It's cubed shaped, it's really small. I'm running out of space in here. I haven't got a huge amount of space, and a G7 or a G8 is just an amazing machine. It gives me server features in a very small box. Now, if I had space, by all means, I would go with a bigger server, probably dual processor. I'm sure you can buy something old, which is pretty inexpensive, and probably I would go with a hard drive enclosure, 19 inches. I would probably build a small rack, and that would be expandable forever. But I don't have space for a rack, so the Microserver Gen 8, it's an amazing compact machine. And it's an amazing improvement on the G7, as we saw during the video, besides the fact that the G7 can still fit 6 hard drives. So once again, if you have a bucket of 2, 3, 4 terabytes hard drives, well, the G7 can fit 6 of them, so you can make a bigger RAID. Also remember, both the G7 and the G8 with an LSI card are SAS compatible, and especially nowadays with prices a bit skyrocketed for hard drives as well, especially second-hand SAS drives can be pretty inexpensive. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with my purchase. The second G8 is going to be ready in a few days, and I'm really looking forward to have it up and running with TrueNas on both, one the backup of the other one. This has been a very long video. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, as usual, I'd appreciate a thumb up down below. And also consider subscribing to this channel and my main channel if you like this kind of things. Don't forget I'm on Facebook and on Patreon, and the links are down below in the description. There is a free tier on Patreon, so no excuses. But if you don't want to support me on Patreon, well, maybe you can buy me a coffee. And the link is also down below in the description. If you don't want to buy me a coffee, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I wish you a great day, and I hope to see you again soon here on my channels for my next videos. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Bye-bye.